Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. Just like to remind everyone, this show is sponsored by FanDuel on the Believe Network. And all we ask is that you also like, comment, share, and subscribe. That'll definitely help our algorithm. So the trial of Donna Adelson ended yesterday. Guilty of all charges. This is a extremely complicated case, convoluted case going back to 2014. A jury found Donna Adelson guilty of murder in the 2014 death of her former son-in-law, Dan Markel, a Florida law professor. She is the fifth person convicted in this case. On the screen, you see her son, Charlie, who was previously convicted. For more than a decade, the killing of well-known Florida law professor Dan Markel has consumed a group of state prosecutors in Tallahassee who secured 4 convictions as they peeled back a complicated murder for hire involving the family of the professor's ex-wife. His ex-wife, on the screen there, Wendy Adelson. Donna Adelson, Mr. Markel's mother-in-law and the grandmother of his 2 sons, was convicted of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation of murder. Miss Adelson, who's 75 years old, sobbed and repeatedly cried out, "Oh my God," after the verdict was read at the Leon County Courthouse in Tallahassee. So this case really caught everyone's interest because it was so devious and convoluted, and 4 people already had been convicted. And I don't think anyone expected anything different in this case, but they surely got it. They surely got a conviction. This is what it sounded like in court yesterday when the judge read the verdict.
We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the indictment, first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder. Mrs. Adelson, control yourself. Count 2. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 2 of the indictment, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Count 3. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 3 of the indictment, solicitation to commit first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of solicitation to commit first-degree murder. And it is signed and dated by the foreperson. One moment. Members of the jury, the bailiff will escort you to the jury room.
Keep in mind that Donna Adelson is 75 years old. This is undoubtedly a
Mrs. Adelson, while this was not the outcome I'm sure that you desired, there will not be any further outbursts in front of the jury. If you cannot control yourself, I am going to have to determine if you will be removed from the remainder of this process. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Yes. Do you need a moment to collect yourself? Before the jurors are brought back in, we will take a brief 2-minute break. Please give her tissues if she needs them.
So this was in court yesterday when the guilty verdict was read by the judge. Donna Adelson.
When the jurors are brought back into the room, does the defense wish to have the jurors polled before they are discharged?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very well.
So they're going to take a poll of the jurors when they come back in to see what they voted on, how they voted, all the charges. But I don't think this was an unexpected result. I think that people expected Miss Adelson to get convicted. Her son-in-law, Miss Dan Markell, was 41 at the time. He was a legal scholar at Florida State University, and he was shot on July 18th, 2014, in the driveway of his home in upscale Tallahassee neighborhood. He died 14 hours later at a hospital. His murder has been the subject of news articles, television shows, and of course, a podcast. In 2023, a different jury convicted Mrs. Adelson's son, Charles Adelson, a Fort Lauderdale periodontist, of the same charges as his mother, after prosecutors showed that he had arranged and paid for Mr. Markell's murder. Mr. Adelson is serving a sentence of life in prison. The three other people in the case are Catherine Magbuana, Mr. Adelson's former girlfriend, Sigfredo Garcia, the father of Miss Magbuana's children, and Luis Rivera, a former leader of the North Miami Latin Kings gang. For 11 years, we have been forced to a life filled with unimaginable pain and heartbreak, according to Ruth Markell, Mr. Markell's mother. She told the judge in an impact statement after the verdict on Thursday, "We have lost a treasure." According to prosecutors, Miss Adelson orchestrated the plot so that her daughter, Wendy Adelson, who you see up on the screen right there, who was embroiled in an ugly custody dispute with Mr. Markell, could move with the couple's two young sons to South Florida. A judge has denied her relocation petition after the divorce. Miss Magbuana's initial trial resulted in a hung jury, but in the second trial, she was convicted of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation of murder in 2022. She was sentenced to life in prison with 2 additional 30-year sentences to run consecutively with her life term. She testified against Mr. Adelson and his mother. So this case goes back many years, and there's the son, Charles Adelson, and we see on the right in the thumbnail is Dan Markell, who was the husband of Wendy Adelson, who was murdered. This is the prosecutor on the screen. You see Georgia Kappelman. Just think how far back this case goes. It just seemed extremely devious, this whole caper. But one thing I think we expect down the road, and you see up on the screen, Wendy Adelson, there's a good possibility that she may also get charged down the road. I'm not predicting that. I just think it's a good possibility. This is CNN reporting on this case yesterday.
Grandmother has been found guilty of first-degree murder in the 2014 killing of her former son-in-law, Daniel Markell. Now, the case, rooted in a bitter custody battle and family tensions, ended with Adelson breaking down as the verdict was read.
The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder. Mrs. Adelson, control yourself.
CNN's Jean Casares joins us now with more details. Really dramatic.
Well, the jury had to be taken out of the room.
Yeah.
She just absolutely sort of collapsed. The judge said, you know, you've got to take a minute. They were brought back in. And then the judge, when they left, he told that the jail has to be alerted because she has to have precautions so she doesn't harm herself.
Wow.
Last night. She was convicted on the theory of principle, and she was convicted of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and solicitation to commit first-degree murder. Now, she didn't pull the trigger. Those were the hitmen, but she aided, assisted, encouraged, and it was largely a circumstantial case. But the strength, as you look at the whole case, was there. The jury believed. They only deliberated for a number of hours. Like the back of her yearly planner in the notes area, she had the license plate of Dan Markell's vehicle. The hitmen had to have the license plate number to go and follow him in Tallahassee and kill him. But there are victims in this case. And one of those victims is the mother of Dan Markel. Both of his parents spoke last night. They live in Toronto, so they gave their victim impact statements last night. And his mother talked about, as the other grandmother, now convicted, is watching, but what these murders have done to her.
Danny's murder was orchestrated by his former mother-in-law, Donna Adelson, and other co-conspirators, and is a crime of cruelty. It is a murder of grief, a murder of selfishly prioritizing one's own desires over what is just or right. And at its core, this was a murder of convenience, so that one grandmother could live closer to her grandchildren. She killed their father and ripped the children from the other grandparents' lives.
Now, the sentencing will be actually...
You know, when you think of that whole premise, that what this was over, it was over a custody battle. And that the grandmother, who we see up on the screen, Donna Adelson, she conspired to have these people hired with her son, Charles Adelson, to murder her son-in-law. But the most damning evidence came from Donna Adelson's own mouth, captured on secret recordings. The whole thing started to unravel thanks to an FBI sting operation known as the Bump. In 2016, 2 years after the murder, an undercover agent walked up to Donna on a Miami street. He pretended to be a friend of the hitman and handed her a piece of paper with an article about the murder and $5,000 written on it, a clear blackmail threat. Investigators had the family's phone wiretapped, and they were listening to see what she would do next. They didn't wait long. Donna's very first call was to her son, Charlie. On that recording, she didn't sound confused or scared of some random stranger. Instead, she spoke like they shared a secret. She told Charlie she was handed some paperwork and that they had to talk in person. When Charlie asked who it involved, Donna's reply was chilling. Well, probably both of us. That one conversation was gold for prosecutors. It showed that her first instinct was to call the very person they believed was her co-conspirator. In the days that followed, the wiretaps caught a storm of panicked calls between Donna, Charlie, and Catherine Magwanya. They were filled with coded talk about a TV that cost $5,000 and worries that someone knew the details. These weren't calls of innocent people being extorted. They were calls of a family scrambling because their conspiracy was about to be exposed. So the wiretaps was some of the biggest evidence against Donna Adelson. And as they say, her own mouth was the most damaging to her of evidence against her. Her own words that this prosecutor you see on the screen, Georgia Kappelman, was able to put together this case, surgically put together this case, and systematically get 4 convictions. Unbelievable job by the prosecutor in this case. But what we know now, of course, is Donna Adelson, 75 years old, will spend the rest of her life in prison when she gets sentenced, because she's been convicted of all 3 charges: murder, first degree, conspiracy, so she is definitely never, ever going to see the light of day, and we'll always remember her face when the guilty verdict was brought down in this case. Folks, just so you know, Police Off the Cuff podcast is sponsored by FanDuel. Police Off the Cuff on the Believe Network. When the start of the NFL season, you can go on FanDuel, pick out a Super Bowl winner this early in the season. FanDuel Sportsbook. So, folks, we're just giving you a quick synopsis of this case. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless. Whatever soldiers saving up